Hi Delvers, so welcome to our bootcamp. So in this lesson, we would learn two basic things. Number one, we would learn what is SQL, and number two, we would learn how it's been used as a data analyst. My name is Pipe. I'm your instructor at Data Delve. It would be great if you can like and subscribe because that would help you get notifications once we drop the next video in this bootcamp. So let's get straight into it. What is SQL? SQL is an acronym for Structured Query Language. It's been in existence since the 1970s. Primarily, SQL is used to query, to update, to administer data that are stored in a database. Oftentimes, it's used primarily on tables because in a database, for example, a lot of things are stored. You have views, you have functions, and you also have tables that are stored in a database. So SQL is not the database. SQL is to query data stored in a database, and more than ever is to query tables that are stored in the database. It's one of the most common method of accessing and retrieving data in a relational database today. And so you have different organizations that have created this in different forms. But the most common or the most used one is MySQL, and that's the Oracle's open source database management software. And it's been used consistently because it's open source and is also free. Hence, I guess that's why people use them. So there are important terms when it comes to SQL. And the first one is query. Now, query in simple terms is some set of codes that are written to extract some set of informations from a table in simple terms. So that's querying. Also important term that is used in the world of SQL is a database. A database, as I said earlier, is used to store a collection of data, and now that data can be in tables, can be as functions, basically to just keep data stored. Why SQL is to query the data that's been stored. An important term also is tables. Now, tables basically is what we query in the database using SQL, if that makes sense. So I have here, I said it's a specific data type structure within the database that organizes data in tabular columns and rows. And number 4 is the output. That is, after I've written a set of code to query, a set of code, which is the query, what comes out, what I receive is the output. I have this little pictorial diagram here just to explain this. So now, what there is the database, which I said contains many things. I said contains tables, as you can see, contains views, stored procedures, and functions. However, when we're in the world of SQL, we use tables more often when it comes to querying, because that's what is being used. So you have those things stored in the database, and when we query, basically what we're doing is, as I said earlier, we are writing a set of code or a set of instruction to pull out an information from the database. So what we have here is what is called the query. So that's a select statement. We're going to get to all of these in the following lessons. That's a select statement, and that's the from. Basically what this query is saying is select. Now the start there means everything. So select everything from city. Now city would be a type of table that is stored in our database. So very simple. You have the database. It stores tables, views, stored procedures, and function. Then tables, which are oftentimes in rows and not oftentimes, every time in rows and columns, are stored under the table bit of a database. And SQL would help us query those tables to get our result, which is called our output. So basically what we have said here is we need everything that is stored in the table city. So it comes up with everything with the ID, the name, the country code, the district, and the population. So I think this pictorial example gives a proper understanding to what we've just said. So let's just move on a little bit. So how does a data analyst use SQL? Now, I've categorized this into two main processes. Number one is data cleaning, and number two is what we call exploratory data analysis. It's EDA, basically. So data cleaning, now it's not as though, the real sense is data is dirty. That's the real sense. Now, real world data is dirty. So, because say, for example, you want to pull an info of the date of birth from some students, just an example. So you want their name or the student ID, their name and their date of birth. Oftentimes, if you don't place restrictions in the form that you send, so people can put a slash in between the month, the year, and the day for their date of birth. Some can put a dash. Some can put a full stop. People, oftentimes, if there's no specified means or a standardized means to collect that data or to collect that specific information, people just go off the top of their heads to do whatever means they are used to, which oftentimes would mean that when we've collected the data, would have numerous formats within which people have placed in their data, in this case, their date of birth. Hence why this process is very critical when it comes to the world of a data analyst. So data cleaning basically is the process of identifying and fixing those errors, those inconsistencies in data or irrelevant data in a data set, just to improve the quality of the data and the usability. So, in simple terms, we want to ensure that this data is unified. We want to ensure that this data is consistent, which oftentimes in real world, they are not consistent. So that's data cleaning, basically. So the process is to ensure that it's accurate, it's complete, and it's consistent. Just word and opposite. I have a chart here that breaks down all of the processes. Now, not all of these processes are being used every single time for every data, because each data will have their peculiar problems. But here's just a bit of some. So here I have missing data. Now, missing data is one of a popular thing. So oftentimes, if the form is not compulsory, some people just not fill in the data where they should fill in the data. So you have things like a data, rows and columns, or a table, rows and columns, and you have some missing informations in that table. And that's something that you need to clean. You need to resolve, because if you don't resolve it, that singular error or that singular missing data can, in a large sense, if that gets too much, can totally disrupt what you're trying to do. Because now what you need to know about data analysis is, data analysis isn't just about analyzing the data. It's more about ensuring that the data speaks. We want to, as a business, for example, we want to make business-driven informations. We don't just want to assume. We want to ensure that what we are doing is exactly what is authentic based on the data that we have received. Hence why, as data analyst, you can't just say, oh, it's just a missing data. It doesn't matter. It actually matters, because that single or that missing data that you are ignoring can play a huge role when it comes to you compiling a report that a company or organization would like to use to draw out strategies or growth patterns or huge things. So I'm saying your work as a data analyst is very critical, very important, because it can either make a company or mar the company, if that makes sense. Hence why we need to ensure the data is clean. So you have things like missing data that needs to be dealt with. You have standardization of data. So as I said earlier, say for example, data was written in a different format. We need to standardize it to ensure that the data collectively is written in the same format. We have to normalize data. Sometimes you see duplicates, which is I think that's probably, in my opinion, one of the most errors we run into when it comes to analysis of data. So you have duplicate data, so that is a set of rows and columns duplicated through the data. So you need to know those duplicates and obviously remove the duplicates from the data sets and many more. So all of these things, when we get down into our course, we're going to check into this, and we're even going to have a specific course or lesson where all we're going to do in that lesson is just to clean the data, but that'll be much more down the process. So let's go straight into EDA. So EDA sometimes is very similar to data cleaning, but also not similar. So in EDA, all we need to do is we have investigated the data, or we are investigating the data to bring out the key attributes in that data that will help us draw out trends and patterns. So, in other words, you're saying, I've seen this. What are the trends in this? Oh, is this a downward spiral? Or is this an increment? Is this a decrease? Because all of that means that you're translating the data now into English language. So you're saying, 20 students opted for biology. 10 students opted for mathematics. So that would mean that we have more students going for biology compared to maths. So you're beginning to uncover trends, which is, as I said, data analysis is not just about analyzing. That analysis is a means to an end, is not the end. You analyze the data. After you've analyzed the data, then we uncover trends and patterns in that data that can push the result we want as a firm or as an organization. To be fair, when you see a business owner, their concern is not how you can build wonderful dashboards, or how you can write wonderful queries properly formatted. Yeah, that's important, but from a business perspective, that is just not important. What a business owner is concerned about is, so what is data saying? What do we need to do? What do we need to implement? What do we need to change? So your role as a data analyst is to analyze that data, clean the data, then uncover trends and information that can push the business forward, that can make a transformation in how we do things and how we pattern our businesses. You see, I have a chart here that gives a bit of an explanation of EDA. So you have, number one, you have to understand the problem, really important, because you're trying to solve something, and if you don't understand what you're trying to solve, you don't know what you're going to do. So you have to understand the problem, inspect the data, and do missing data. Now, you would be like, I thought we said this is under data cleaning. But the truth is, the first thing you need to do when you receive the data is to clean the data. But sometimes you don't get to see all of the errors and the mistakes in the data until much later. So when you begin to explore the data much more to draw out patterns and trends, sometimes you then uncover some other errors that you need to fix. Hence why in EDA, you have a mix of data cleaning and EDA. EDA is not a standalone concept. It's still a blend of data cleaning and obviously uncovering trends and patterns in the data. So you explore the data characteristics, you perform data transformation, very important. You visualize data relationships, very important. That is, that's when you come into BI tools, or visualization tools where you're visualizing the data so we can look into it, and it helps it kind of present the data in a clearer form. Say, for example, you have a chart and you can just look into the chart and begin to see distinct patterns and trends that you need to look out for and work on, basically. So also in EDA, we check for outliers, and that's always there. You see just a random figure. Say, for example, you're checking through the age of students, or you've received information of the ages of students, and they're meant to be between, say, 15 to 20, and then you see someone of 70 years old, and you're like, nah, that's not possible. So there always be those outliers, and you need to undo them. You understand? You need to go into them to see exactly why that is there and try to correct it. And at the end of the day, you need to communicate the findings and the insight, which is very, very important. So basically, that's how SQL is being used through or in the field of data analysis, and it's very important that we know these things because it kind of helps us to know what we are doing. It keeps you, it prevents you just being stuck in the process. Now, the process is important, but analysis is always a means to an end. You analyze so you can uncover insights, so you can uncover trends that can drive business solutions, that can drive drastic change in organizations. So it's beyond dashboard building, it's beyond writing wonderful codes. Now, these are important, but they are all means to an end. We need to allow the data speak back to us so we can make tangible change, tangible results, and solve real world problems. So basically, that will be what we're going to go through today. In our subsequent lessons, we would install MySQL, which I have said in the earlier part of this video that it's the free version, Oracle's free version. We're going to install that. We're going to also navigate through the UI, so just to check what some basic buttons and some basic informations, what they mean through that UI. We'll also create a database. We'll create a database and also import a CSV file that we'll be using through this whole process of data or through this whole process of the bootcamp. So it's going to be a ride, and I want you to just follow me a step per time. I'm so sure you're going to learn. I mean, I'm something that I can hit my chest on. You're going to learn. So just follow me through the ride. I know it will be a wonderful one. So on this note, I would say that will be all. Thank you for joining the introductory lesson to SQL. Again, as I said, like and subscribe, because that keeps you in tabs once we drop new videos. So on this note, I will say bye. See you soon.